if one branch of government can spy on another branch of government, that erodes the separation of powers. What the FBI did during the Biden administration was unconstitutional and unconscionable.
Well, this is an extremely busy news cycle, but there is a massive story getting buried, and it has been getting buried over the last several days. I'm going to read from a Fox News digital report here before we go ahead and bring in Republican Senator of Wyoming, Cynthia Lummis. After I read this Fox News report, you'll know exactly why we're about to talk to Senator Lummis, who finds herself at the center of this massive story the media is barely paying any attention to. Now, before we do, to get the full version of this interview where I asked some, I think, pretty critical questions that include information about how surprised the senator was by this, whether President Biden himself may have known, all of that stuff. We're going to do that for our premium subscribers. So if you want to see the full version, undercurrents.tv is where you can go to get the premium membership. But no problem if not, subscribe here on YouTube, wherever you're getting your podcasts. Now, without further ado, here's the report from Fox News Digital. They say they first reported on Monday that Jack Smith, former special counsel Jack Smith, and his, quote, Arctic Frost team investigating January 6 allegedly monitored the phone calls of Senator Cynthia Lummis and fellow Republican Senators Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, this is a long list, Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, and Republican Representative in the House, Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. Fox News Digital exclusively obtained an FBI document stating the names of the lawmakers and that an FBI special agent on Jack Smith's team, quote, conducted preliminary toll analysis on the toll records associated with them. There's a lot of legalese stuffed into that explanation because that's often how surveillance agencies are able to make this look a bit more innocuous than it actually is. But in plain language, this is saying that the special counsel during Biden's administration was spying on Republican senators, was surveilling the phone records of Republican senators. So the Fox News Digital report goes on to say an FBI official said that Smith and his team were able to, quote, view which phone numbers the senators called, along with the location each call originated and where it was received. That is very specific information, and it is actually in the source document here. It's not exactly being denied because you can see it on the document itself. Now, Senator Lummis sent a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel that I think raised some questions with answers that are absolutely critical, that raised questions in which this scandal, which Senator Chuck Grassley has said is, quote, worse than Watergate. Historic proportion here. And I'm just going to tell you, in D.C., this has rattled conservatives. You can understand why. From my perspective, this should be rattling everyone because it is such a breach of constitutional separation of powers that if this gets reversed and you start seeing special counsels in Republican administrations spying on Democrats will be concerned that their civil rights have been violated as well. So hopefully we get more answers to this. We're going to talk to Senator Lummis in just one second, but she raises questions about how far this actually goes. Did this happen outside the DOJ? Who else knew about this? Who else knew about this? Did she have any suspicion that she was under surveillance? And what activity might Jack Smith have actually been investigating that he believed rose to the level of actually looking at these phone records, pulling these phone records, surveilling these phone records of Republican senators, and of course, one member of the House of Representatives. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in Senator Cynthia Lummis, Republican of Wyoming, to tell her side of this shocking story. Senator Lummis, thank you so much for being here. Senator, in a new letter to FBI Director Kash Patel, you've called these revelations, quote, one of the most serious infringements on the separation of powers in American history. Senator Grassley, your colleague, has said this is worse than Watergate. Could you explain to us a little bit why you think this scandal is of such historic proportions?
The framers created a separation of powers within the government because even the framers knew that there were reasons the government should have checks and balances. So if one branch of government can spy on another branch of government, that erodes the separation of powers. What the FBI did during the Biden administration was unconstitutional and unconscionable. That they would think that their right to know who we called, when we called them, how long we spoke, is any of their business is absurd and unconstitutional. So this is something that cannot stand. There were 8 senators and 1 House member identified in this memo that were spied on, and we've got to get to the bottom of it.
You know, this is such an important point about the constitutionality, because obviously Jack Smith is going to claim that he was investigating the fomenting of an insurrection. That would be how he would defend this investigation. But you, in your letter to Director Patel, say that actually what you were doing is protected by the speech and debate clause. And I was hoping, Senator, you could flesh out that point a little bit. Why was this constitutionally protected activity as part of your duties as a United States Senator?
On January 6th, we voted to confirm the electors from every state, including 2 states that were challenged, Arizona and Pennsylvania. Those were the 2 that were debated before the vote was taken, pursuant to the debate clause. All of that was done in the public sphere, within the eye shot and earshot of every American who was concerned. So to have people, regardless of why they were vetted by the FBI, targeted, and so everyone we called, family members, friends, associates, travel agents, it just didn't matter. They were getting all of that information, what numbers we called, how long we spoke to them for that period of time. It could make me wonder whether the Biden FBI had interfered with the 2020 election, and they were actually trying to figure out how much we knew as U.S. senators about their own wrongdoing. So without the information about why they were targeting us, why they were spying on us, one can only surmise what it was. If it had been that they were concerned about where we were and what we were doing leading up to and the days after January 6th, all they had to do was turn on C-SPAN, because we were in the Senate chamber. We were working for the public in public. So what the FBI did here is unconstitutional. It violated our civil rights. It is wrong. It divided the separation of powers, and we can't let this stand.
And the Constitution obviously delegates the opportunity to, or actually the obligation to, certify electors to U.S. senators. And it's not unconstitutional. It's not criminal by any means to debate whether or not a slate of electors should be certified. Democrats have done this. Republicans have done this. And from the list of you and your colleagues who appear to have been surveilled in this case, it seems like that's exactly what they were after. But Senator, correct me if I'm wrong here. There's really nothing criminal about that.
Exactly right. It would have been different if we would have been out in the crowd that was storming the Capitol on January 6th. But we were in the Senate chamber, and in the case of Representative Kelly, in the House chamber, debating these things in public. So this is reprehensible and has to be pursued by those of us who want to make sure that no one who's in the FBI or the Department of Justice can ever do this again.
And with your knowledge of how these types of investigations are conducted typically, I know you asked Director Patel for more information on this, but do you have any information about who may have authorized this surveillance in the case?
We do not. We received copies of the redacted memo that had our names on it as the people who were surveilled. But in the space that said authorized by, there were two names that were redacted. So I do not know who they were. I think it's important that we know why they authorized it, what they were spying on us for, and how much information they kept in their files. Our family members, who we surely called during that 4 or 5 day period, should not have to suffer being surveilled and spied on simply because they're related to us.
Right, having their rights trampled on as American citizens.
Exactly right.
You asked Director Patel for potential transcripts. I'm curious if you have any reason to believe the FBI actually might have procured transcripts of some of those calls. Maybe they're with family members, maybe they're with other senators. Do you have any reason to believe that may have been the case?
We do not know. And this memo sort of begs us to ask those questions. Did they go further than the memo indicates? Did they surveil other members of the House and Senate? Certainly, if the purpose for the surveillance was to target Republican senators who supported President Trump, and we're concerned about election interference or malfeasance, this is a short list. There are many other House and Senate members who were every bit as involved as the 8 or 9 of us on that list in trying to figure out whether it was a clean election and whether the electors that were submitted by the state should be certified.
You also in the letter mention you want information on whether there was NSA or non-DOJ, non-Department of Justice surveillance. Do you have any reason to believe that some other surveillance may have been happening of you or any of your colleagues that are listed here?
That's an additional concern. If one federal agency that falls under the Department of Justice, in this case the FBI, has conducted surveillance and received information pursuant to that surveillance from the phone companies, to whom was it passed along? The White House, the NSA, the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, and others. Yet another reason why the civil rights were violated of each of these members. There may have been other members. We need to find out if this list is longer. And what they did with the information. And we may have to file lawsuits against the department and pursue discovery to find this out. I would hope that Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and others at the FBI can answer our questions without senators having to sue, but that option remains on the table.
Really important point, Senator. And I wanted to ask about your Democratic colleagues, because this to me seems like a revelation that should have chills running down the spines of all lawmakers. It is such a breach of constitutional separation of powers. It's also a breach just of our constitutional norms, the way that we interpret the separation of powers kind of socially as a society and as the American people. Have you heard, even privately, concerns from Democrats that this was a sort of shocking overstep by the Biden administration?
I have not heard that. Of course, this information just came to light during this government shutdown. And so we're in a hyper-partisan moment of time right now. I'm hoping that once things return to normal, to the extent that that even exists in the U.S. Senate, that we'll be able to have those conversations with them, because how would they feel if Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were returning the favor regarding Democrat senators right now? That it cannot be tolerated. It must be stopped And it has to be prevented from occurring again, regardless of the party in charge.
Do you have a take on the media coverage of this? Again, it's a news story, but it seems to me, Senator, if the parties were reversed here, it would be probably headline news. This is a very crowded news cycle, but this seems to not be getting a huge deal of attention as one of the subjects of the surveillance. You would be in a great position to know this. You would know the media inquiries that you and your office are fielding. You would know how much talk is being done in the press about what happened. What's your assessment so far?
Yeah, I have heard crickets from the media that President Trump refers to as the mainstream media, the group that tends to lean to the left. No PBS, no NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, not a peep. And yet an indication of the fact that they're putting their hand on the scale simply by their story selection, and the fact that they chose not to report on this and not to discuss it with members of the Senate who were spied upon is an indication to me of their repeated bias.
Again, so for the rest of this interview, head on over to undercurrents.tv. I'm going to ask the senator if President Biden may have known. I'm going to ask the senator basically what her reaction was. Was she surprised? Did she have an inkling as to whether she may have been if she may have been getting surveilled? All of that over at undercurrents.tv, where you can subscribe and get access to the full premium experience of the show. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will be back here with more soon.